Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Better Together, SAP and Salesforce.com. We have a very exciting lineup of presenters for you today. Dave Stanford from Intrigo, along with Mariano Capurro and Sanjay Raghu from MuleSoft. Once again, if you're interested in following us in the Twitterverse, we provided our Twitter handles at MuleSoft and at CloudHub, and Intrigo's Twitter handle as well at Intrigo Sys. Before we begin, just wanted to go over a few housekeeping items. First and foremost, a recording of the presentation will be made available directly after this presentation and sent to you via email along with the slides. If you do have any questions, you can feel free to submit them via the text box in the bottom right-hand portion of your screen, and we'll be hosting a Q&A at the end of the presentation. If you have any questions that are urgent, in need of urgent attention, you can submit them to tinyurl.com/askmulesoft, and one of our experts will get back to you as quickly as possible. To introduce our presenters, first and foremost, Mariano Capurro, a Director of Engineering here at MuleSoft. He has 10 years of experience designing and building enterprise software. He's fluent in Java, English, and Spanish, working out of the MuleSoft office in Buenos Aires, and interested in application integration and identity management. Dave Stanford, the Senior Solutions Consultant from Intrigo, has been working with MRP, ERP, and SCM systems for over 30-plus years, so really brings a broad breadth of experience and expertise around SAP. He's been involved in over 400 integrations over the course of his career and has experience in process and discrete manufacturing operations. Without further ado, I'll present Sanjay Raghu as well, who will talk us through the agenda for today's events and then dive right into the presentation. Sanjay, take it away.
Thanks, Aaron. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar today. Fantastic to have you here. I just want to walk you through the agenda. And so what we like to do is, if you're not familiar with MuleSoft or with Intrigo, just give you a quick introduction. And then we'll dive into describing the overarching problem with bringing these two systems together, SAP and Salesforce. After that, we'll cover the use case around customer master, and then a second use case around entitlement and return processing. And we'll close with Q&A, so do post your great questions in the chat window. So MuleSoft and Intrigo are bringing you this webinar today, and we've partnered up and to provide a great set of solutions around SAP and Salesforce connectivity. Let me tell you a little about each of these companies. MuleSoft is firmly planted in the integration space. We're the most widely used integration platform for connecting SaaS as well as enterprise apps in hybrid environments as well as cloud and on-premise. Some of the descriptors around us: 3,200 plus on-premise deployments, over 2,300 cloud deployments, and then we have a burgeoning developer community that's rapidly growing with over 100,000 developers attached to us. Another great stat to call out is that we have a 97% customer satisfaction rating. With regards to SAP and Salesforce solutions, there are three solutions that we have available. The first one's called the Enterprise Gateway for SAP. The second one's a Cloud Gateway for SAP. And then we have a third one, which is a NetWeaver-based solution, and that's the SAP NetWeaver PI Gateway for Salesforce.com. Now, we are very much interested in going to market with key domain experts, and Intrigo certainly falls in that category. They're a leading SAP channel partner, as well as a provider of a whole gamut of services from consulting, implementation, to support. They're marked by a tremendously hands-on leadership team that is firmly immersed in the best practices around SAP, and they've conducted over 100 successful SAP implementations, some of those including core ERP, supply chain, and analytics. With regards to SAP and Salesforce integration experience, they are particularly savvy in RXO management involving SAP and SFDC, and RXO is returns, exchanges, and orders. The other two areas that they've got tremendous experience in is case management in Salesforce, as well as back-end processing on SAP ECC. So coming to the meat of the matter for this webinar, there appears to be an overarching problem around connecting SAP and Salesforce, and the challenges are threefold. Firstly, what's required is seamless connectivity, to be able to easily connect these systems and ensure that they facilitate your business processes, and they allow for good workflow that can be accommodated in a variety of situations. And the third one is around data models. Different enterprises have different data models that they have chosen. Being flexible and accommodating these various data models and allowing for changes over time is certainly one of the challenges around integrating SAP and Salesforce. The good news is that MuleSoft is certainly the best way to integrate SFDC with SAP. And a couple of key highlights around why that is so. Firstly, we can execute any standard and custom BAPI in SAP. So that gives you a wide range of flexibility. You don't have to stick just to the standard BAPI set. We're also able to receive calls from ABAP code, and that allows you to expose the external code running in Mule as a BAPI inside SAP. So that makes it very easy to do bilateral communications between SAP, Mule, and Mule. The other aspect that's very important to note is that we're able to send and receive iDocs. But I think the most important piece here is that the integration is characterized by far easier usage, and all the SAP objects can be basically treated as XML documents by MuleSoft. So without further ado, let me hand over to Dave Stanford and Mariano Capurro, who are going to start talking through our main use case, which is Customer Master.
Okay, let's start off with talking a little bit about the different ways that we're going to communicate between SFDC and with SAP. And there's really three major ones. I would say that there's the integration of master data, whereby when we are in SFDC and we have a prospect, we want to be able to, at the appropriate time, update the SAP systems for the customer master. So if I've got a prospect, I've got an opportunity, it becomes a real order or a real quote. When we push that information over to SAP, we want to be able to create or update the appropriate data within the customer master, or potentially even the product master, the sales area, etc. One of the things that's a very powerful capability within this is that if you've dealt with SAP, you've dealt with the idea of hierarchies, whereby when you create a customer kind of as it is, and then you create company specifics. So if you deal with them from Europe as well as the U.S. as well as South America, and those are physically different companies, then you want to be able to have information update to all those as appropriate. Similarly, on the sales area side, for my sales organization, distribution channel, and division, if I've got multiple entities working with the end customer and there are different currencies or different terms and conditions, instead of having to go to that master data and put it in each time through, I want to be able to simply have all that information updated, then I can do that directly. Let me share my system. And we're going to look at in our example today, the customer master creation, where we can automatically add in customer master data when we created information in Salesforce. So in general, when most people are using Salesforce, they're using it to track prospects as well as customers. At the appropriate point in time, when somebody becomes a customer, we want that information to update directly. So here you'll see information coming from Salesforce where it's a new account, or if it's not a new account, we want to update information there, update the number, update the credit limit if we have the security to do that. We want the capability of having these two in sync at any one point in time. One is seamless in the SAP side and the Salesforce side. Number two, we found that in general, people don't really want to cross the bridge between one and the other. Meaning the people who are familiar with Salesforce don't really want to spend a lot of time in SAP, and vice versa. They're comfortable in their own environment. So if we can make it such that these systems synchronize directly as they work, then so much the easier, and we don't have the issue of trying to make sure that everything is correct on both sides of the fence. So, for example, when we put information in Salesforce, we've got account IDs, account names, the basic blocking and tackling information. And then MuleSoft picks up and says, okay, let's map this through at the appropriate time. And then we create the customer master record with the various SAP variables that you see over on the right-hand side going directly so that they're always in sync. Now, what you're seeing here is the basic information. We can add line items in the Salesforce area for the company codes and for the sales organizations so that we have the complete picture. For those of you who worked with the product master has information that corresponds to not just the product itself, but there's sales organization information, there's plant information, there's valuation information that if I've got a change and I'm making this available from multiple facilities, I have to manually go in each time through and update that information, meaning that I put in for a new product 1 in plant 1000 and then product 1 in plant 2000, which can be an incredibly tedious process. But by setting this up, we can set it so that when we put in a product, we can update all the various facets of the SAP master view directly. And most organizations that I've dealt with, particularly the larger ones, have all had to write custom programs to perform that same task. So if we can do this from here, Salesforce, could be Agile, could be a number of different systems. MuleSoft can glue all that together so that we have that information on both sides directly. Once again, a serious ease of use process. So the process flow is we'll establish the prospect in Salesforce, and then we'll convert them to the customer, and then via the transactions that you may be familiar with, the old XD01, XD02, the credit profile under FD32, creating also partners. So it can be not just ship to customers, but build to customers. We can also add things for sales reps and update employee masters. All this is possible via the MuleSoft mapping so that we can basically have one-stop shopping and have it so that one system will be in sync with the other ones at any point in time, and all new, appropriate new information can be created in the other system directly. With that, let me pass it over to Mariano, and we'll run through the demonstration of same.
Thanks, Dave. Okay, let me share my screen now. Okay, so moving from the comfortable zone of the presentation, let's see all this working. Okay, so what we are seeing right now is Mule Studio. This is Mule graphical development tool. So the flow you're currently taking a look at is the one that will do the synchronizations of accounts that turn from prospect into customer from Salesforce to SAP. Okay, so let's give a quick look at this flow. It starts with Salesforce Streaming API component. This is a component that instead of pulling information from Salesforce, it will just register into a topic. This topic can be seen as a query to Salesforce. In this case, we are querying basic information from the account, and basically we want only customers, not prospects. So once we get that information, we'll just retrieve the full account, save some of that information in session for future use, and then we check if that account already exists in SAP or not. How do we do this? By checking a custom field we created in Salesforce that holds the customer number in SAP. This is SAP key for customers. If that value doesn't exist, then we create the customer. If not, we just update its information. At the end, we are just generating a log with the results of the execution. So creating the account is basically invoking a standard BAPI call. Let me show you this. BAPI customer create from data one with the results of this call that are transformed into XML. We just create the information to update the account in Salesforce. This is adding the customer number in SAP into Salesforce so that in the future we can validate that the account was already created. And at the end, we are just creating the credit limit. This is something that usually you will be doing after a set of approvals. A business process may be involved here, and that business process can be implemented or in Salesforce or in SAP. In case the account already existed, we are just updating its information, also executing a standard BAPI for changing customers. And I just forgot to mention the create credit limit. It's executing or is using a custom BAPI. Okay, so let's turn this on and switch to Salesforce. Okay, so this is an account we have in Salesforce. You can see that the type is prospect, so we don't want to synchronize this account yet. I have just filled some information here, check the facts. It's empty right now. We're going to use this field in the update part of the demo. So for clarity or for empty values for facts, I will just be creating in SAP the word null so that it's clear for the demo purposes that there's not a value there. Let's now switch to SAP and check that the customer is not there, so that you believe me that the customer actually got created from the application we are running. Now let me edit its type to customer. Of course, in real world, this is not going to be like this, but believe me, this simplifies a lot this demo. Saving this information, so at this point, Salesforce will send information to Mule. Mule will create the connection to SAP. The first time it's initialized, it takes a short amount of time. After that, you will see that this is much faster. So we see that the customer got created. We have here both the Salesforce ID and the SAP ID. Let's switch back to SAP GUI. Let's search for the account now. Here we can see it. Let's open it, and you can check the information, right? As you see, fax information is null. As I told you before, did this just for better visualization of the field. Okay, so now let's go back here. Let's switch back to Salesforce. Let's refresh the screen. So now you can see that the SAP ID is now part of the account. Now let's provide a fax number. Let's save again. Let's check the logs. There it go. And let's get back to SAP GUI and check that the fax information has been synchronized. So we did all these sort of real time without polling or using resources in order to get information from Salesforce. Okay, so that was all for the demo. Thanks. I hand it over back to Dave.
Okay, so there was the customer master. Let's talk just a minute about another option. And I said there's pretty much three different types of ways that we'll utilize this integration. One is the master data synchronization and the passing of data back and forth. The second, and probably the most powerful of these, is going to be the passing back and forth of transactions. As different systems have different responsibilities, for example, Salesforce may be responsible for the initial blocking and tackling of trying to ascertain the problem with a product in the field. It may generate a case where it goes through a knowledge base analysis to see if anybody else has had this type of a problem before. If there's a quick solution to it, then we can give that to them over the phone or communicate that to them somehow. But in some cases, we're going to have the item returned, potentially repaired or replaced, depending on the scenario. If we can have the appropriate systems take care of each of their responsible transactions and synchronize the activity between them, then once again, if I'm in Salesforce, I can understand exactly what's going on with the process that's taking place in SAP, and SAP can receive information to, one, start the process, as well as to be able to send pertinent information back to Salesforce to keep it updated. So the basic blocking and tackling of sending out the RMA, of receiving it, of dispositioning it to a repair center, to sending a replacement, all that can be done within the SAP system, and then SFDC will understand exactly what's taking place so that, once again, your users will be able to see exactly what's happening there. So the customer inquiry comes in, and they want to know the status of their repair. Has it been replaced? Has there been an advanced replacement whereby we will send them something to take care of them in the meantime, or basically replace it outright and then repair it ourselves internally? And then if we have something that comes back in, we can disposition it to see if it's something that we can fix, that we can scrap. If it's something that fell under warranty or doesn't fall under warranty, we'll capture that information as part of SAP and be able to communicate back to Salesforce. So we have different statuses that, depending on the activity, will update at the appropriate time. So in Salesforce, we have assets with warranties, and the warranty information is going to be maintained as master data in SAP. So when we create the equipment record, we'll create it and update Salesforce. The knowledge base will be retained in Salesforce. The case management, the initial inquiry by the customer, will be maintained there. We'll validate the warranty based on information in SAP, but it's done in Salesforce. We'll generate the RMA number in SAP and pass that back to Salesforce. We'll be able to do equipment statuses and reporting on how well we've done over time. Again, MuleSoft comes in and manages what goes where. So when we submit the case to an RMA, we're then going to send it to a returned order, and process the returned order with the appropriate repair steps. We'll then update the customer master as appropriate. We'll understand the equipment and the equipment BOM, meaning if there's a structure, if we're dealing with items with serial numbers and we have a complex structure, we can know whether the parent item is under warranty or one of the subsequent parts is under warranty, and we need to simply replace a part. Warranty records will be updated, the cases will be updated, and then changes can take place. On the SAP side, the transactions will be executed so that the case becomes an RMA. We'll do a return, potentially, depending on the value of the item. In some cases, we'll simply send an advanced replacement and update accordingly. We'll disposition the return, we'll replace it, or we'll repair it and then send it back, or repair it and keep it into our stock. We'll also want to do fault recording so we understand what's wrong with it for our own QA as well as to update Salesforce. And then if there's something that is billable, it's not under warranty, but we're going to fix it, then we'll do the billing and update Salesforce as to invoice numbers and values, etc. A more detailed process flow would look like this, where we're going to have various departments involved in the process, where sales operations is going to create the case. We'll create a service notification on the SAP side so that we'll identify that there is a problem, and we can put in long text and be able to update various QA databases within SAP. We'll then have support verify it, and then we'll update the case, which would then send something to SAP in the form of an RMA. We'll receive our return, potentially, depending on the value. And if, for those of you who are familiar with SAP, you know that you can configure the behavior of the RXO process or the RMA process, depending on the order type that we're working with. So we can have certain things that, because they are of little value, the item category would dictate that we don't expect a return, where in other cases we would. So then we bring it back in, we repair it, and then we send it back. This also includes, and we've done this in a number of cases, whereby we transfer this between hubs. If I've got a global environment and I've got a customer in Thailand who is working through my Singapore hub, but the product was actually manufactured in Silicon Valley, I don't expect my Thailand customer to communicate directly with Silicon Valley. They would work through a hub, they would ship to the hub, and then Singapore would then, via interplant transfer, send it over to Silicon Valley for the actual repair or advanced replacement. That being the case, I need to understand at any point in time within both SAP and Salesforce the fact that they had returned it to one hub, it's in transit to another hub, it's then picked up at that hub and repaired, and then shipped back. So all those transactions associated with the management of the inventory through a hub and spoke network is then available as well. And what the outcome to this, which was incredibly powerful, was that we could identify how much time the inventory or the process was taking at each of the different steps. So how long on average did it take us to get the return? How long did it sit in the Singapore hub for us to, before we then dispositioned it out to the repair? How long did the transit time take? How long did the repair take? And from this, I could get performance metrics to see how well we were addressing our customers' needs and be able to identify if there were bottlenecks as to the best way to go about putting together a better foundation for supporting the RMA process. So that's a little bit about the RXO. It's a much more powerful weapon, if you would, or piece of transactional software, so that on the SFDC side and SAP, we can be in sync with the appropriate information on both sides, depending on the transactions that are taking place in either one. The third one, and I'll close off on this one, is to be able, we mentioned customer master, we mentioned transactional data. The third is what I'll call the 360 view, whereby in Salesforce, if we want to be able to gather information from SAP, let's say I'm looking to do a customer analysis, then I have the capability of drawing from either the SAP database or maybe BI, BW, business objects, etc., summarized information corresponding to sales activity, sales orders, volumes, products, etc. I can drive that directly. So if I want to do an analysis and really provide that 360 view for a customer, I can then get that information from SAP and make that available within Salesforce. So not only am I keeping my master data in sync, I can keep my transactional data in sync, and I can get the information about that customer and our relationship to get that 360 view. On that note, that was the presentation I had, so I'm going to turn this back over to Sanjay and ask for questions.
Thanks, guys. Just a reminder, folks, if you have any questions, please submit them in the chat window. And while that's happening, we'll we'll start taking responses here to those questions.
Yeah, thanks, Dave, and thanks, Mariano, for a very great content-rich presentation. Really appreciate that. Before we dive into the Q&A, just wanted to go over our housekeeping items again. So shortly after this presentation is complete, you'll receive a recording and the slides. So look forward to those in your inbox probably early tomorrow morning. And then once again, if we don't get to your questions over the next 15 or so minutes in our Q&A period, you can feel free to submit any outstanding issues that you'd like to see resolved at tinyurl.com/askMuleSoft. And that goes directly into our expert inbox, and we'll get back to you as quickly as possible. So without further ado, we'll dive into the Q&A. I see questions rolling in, and I think the first one is for Dave. So Dave, is there any canonical documents used for the customer account integration between SAP and Salesforce.com?
I'm sorry, when you're saying conical?
Canonical, sorry.
One more time?
Is there any canonical document used for the customer account integration between SAP and Salesforce.com?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Okay, there's a question in the Q&A inbox.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I'm not sure what you mean by canonical.
Okay.
So canonical is kind of, let me try this with my good English. So as far as I know, from the technical side, there's no canonical document. What they want to know if there's any kind of recommended or documentation that aligns attributes on one side to attributes on the other side.
Oh, I'm sorry. It varies depending on what you're going to be integrating. So, for example, if you're in a single site environment, then there's no need to be dealing with multiple plants. If you're in a single company site, then there's no point in dealing with multiple companies. So depending on what the breadth is of your implementation, that can change. And what we'll do is we'll give you suggested formats depending on the format of your organization and the data elements that you work with.
Mariano, there's a question that just came in around near simultaneous data updates. If you could see that one, would you mind addressing it?
Yep. So in some cases, this depends on the kind of information you are saving. So there are some times where SAP locks a record and until it's able to process it, you cannot update that record again. So there are two ways you can work these ones with. So if you are in an asynchronous sort of configuration, then that's harder to do. Usually you can see this with an IDOC. So in that case, the recommendation is just try to put all the information in one single call and send that IDOC. Or you can just do this synchronously, and in that case you ensure that only one process at a thread at a time is saving that information. If you are doing this from multiple computers, then the best way is to do all the synchronization through the SAP gateway. This is usually more as far as I was able to find a limitation on the SAP side than on the Mule side. Of course, you can solve this by adding Mule code too, right? Every time you get an error because the record or the master record is locked, you can just queue that and retry again in the future.
Dave, there's two questions that I think are best handled by you. One, what do you consider the system of record? And two, how do you control or govern the data?
In general, the system of record is going to be SAP. Obviously, it depends on what that data is. So things like prospect information and opportunities are best left in Salesforce. But for things like the equipment master, warranty information, product information, customer information, usually SAP is the central hub because not only will it be talking to Salesforce, but potentially be talking to other systems as well. So if I've got QA systems or I've got PLM systems or something along those lines, SAP becomes kind of the central repository, except for those things that are very specific to those outlying applications. And bear with me when I say outlying. I'm an SAP guy for X number of years, but that's pretty much how it's done. Now, as far as controlling the governing of the data, when something is submitted to be sent across from one system to another, there are bridges that are built similar to what you saw Mariano do, whereby it would check the SAP system to make sure that there is a customer there. If not, then it will update it as a valid customer. Now, there's some security concerns about that, and you adjust how that bridge is done depending on what those security concerns are. What I mean is, for example, I may not want people in Salesforce to be able to give a credit limit to a new customer. That's best handled by the customer or finance, who are using SAP as the basis for their transaction set. So what folks will do, for example, would be to set it up so that we will pass over a credit limit of $1, and then when the order is placed, it would go on credit hold and be flagged as a new customer for credit review, so they could establish that this new customer's credit limit would be X amount, and then approve them or reject it entirely if that's appropriate. But then, based on the data flow and the meaning of the data, we'll place the area of responsibility to where it belongs.
Thanks, Dave. Mariano, one more question came in around Force.com settings. How will my Force.com settings have to be changed to allow for the integration?
So there's almost nothing to change there. So the only thing you need is a user with enough privileges to run the operations that you want to run there. In the configuration of that user, you will get the key in order to connect to Salesforce. And in the case where you want to use the streaming API, you should create the subscribe topic, and you can do that with Salesforce Workbench utility. So there's not a lot of stuff that needs to happen there.
Okay, thank you, Mariano. Looks like we have gone through the majority of questions, and once again, if you do have questions that didn't get answered, you can feel free to submit them at tinyurl.com/askMuleSoft. But wanted to once again thank our presenters, Sanjay, Dave, and Mariano, for preparing and delivering such a great presentation. The contact information for both organizations, info@MuleSoft.com and info@IntrigoSys.com, is provided for you as well. The next installment in the MuleSoft webinar series will be in 2 weeks, and we'll be discussing our new enterprise security release, which will be GA on December 1st. So some exciting updates around enterprise security. Sanjay, any closing remarks?
No, thank you guys for attending. As Aaron mentioned there, we have a lot of content, a lot of information to share. Obviously, we have the great domain expertise of Intrigo coupled with a robust platform by MuleSoft. And so we're eager to help you out with your integration scenarios. If we can be of any help at all, do contact us at those email addresses on there. If you'd like to see some more information on our SAP-related content, do visit us at mulesoft.com/SAP-integration. And thank you for your attention, and have a great weekend.